Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Swedish beer scene, but they've built a very good reputation for themselves, and I would say that they're best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but also for their modern, fruity, juicy, smoothie, Nordic, whatever we're going to call them, sour beers. So if those are two beer categories that catch your interest, this is one of the Swedish breweries that you really need to check out at the moment, in my opinion. But yeah, for the review today then, we are going to have a look at a beer of a style that we've reviewed quite often from these guys on the channel. It's a style that I know they can do very well, but it's one of their latest releases through Systembolaget. It is supposed to be a pretty nice one, this. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up to Gothenburg once again, Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get the Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing the Gothenburg beers, because it is just channel tradition these days. But for this review then, we are going to return to the wonderful Fermenterarna. So this particular beer is called Cat Yoga. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, a style that we've had from these guys many a time before. But this beer was released as part of the Lokalt och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for December of 2022, and we did get another one from them as well, and I forget the name of that, but you'll see that review come up in a few videos time. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Fermenterarna before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. Just use the search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever. If I've reviewed beers from your local area, they will pop up. But yeah, you can also use the playlist of beers from different countries. Failing that, you'll find this one in the Swedish playlist along with many other things. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit once again about Fermenterarna, or the fermenters as it would be in English. So Fermenterarna was founded by Niklas Aronsson and Anna Claesson, who founded the company together back in 2018. But the brewery was originally based in Strömstad in Västergötland, which is to the north of Gothenburg, quite close to the Norwegian border, apparently a very nice, pretty fishing village, so somewhere that I do need to go and check out. But apparently Niklas's journey with beer started quite randomly. So he went into a beer bar one day and he ordered a beer without really knowing what it was, but it turned out this was the Tropic Thunder from Duggesbrygge, which for me is one of the cult classics in Sweden, and this just kind of blew his mind. You know, this is what beer could actually be. Anna, on the other hand, has had a long history with things that ferment. You know, she used to run the restaurant Kostos Trädgårdar. She fermented, you know, sourdough bread, sauerkraut, you name it, she's played with it and fermented it. She's done a lot of stuff with that. So, you know, his love of beer, her love of fermentation, making a brewery together just kind of made sense. But the brewery itself started out with a small 200-litre brew kit in tanks beginning in late 2018. And they took, or early 2018 I should say, but they actually took a little bit of time later on in late 2018 to scale up after the company received really good reviews on their beers after having visited various festivals. But after this, they had two 500-litre brew kits and a total tank capacity of 17,000 litres. They had been aiming to brew about 50,000 litres over the course of 2019, but they said at this time they had the equipment to brew around 250,000 litres of beer per year if they wanted to. But over the following years, they continued to scale up, build their reputation and get their beer out there a little bit more. And then in August of 2021, they moved to a new brewery in Hisingen in Gothenburg. They took their equipment with them, and they also received a new 3,000-litre brew kit as well. They do have a plan to open up a restaurant and tap room at the brewery. I believe that hasn't happened yet, but yeah, that is something to keep our eye on in the future. But as of December 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 150 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, And like I said to you earlier, they are best known for the different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, and also for the kind of modern Nordic fruity juicy sours. I haven't seen one of them released through Systembolaget from Fermenterarna in a wee while actually, but we need to keep an eye for that out for that going forward. So yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about Fermenterarna for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys though, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So if memory serves me correctly, I paid about 55 Swedish kronor for this one. So that translates to €5.50, £5 sterling, somewhere in the region of like $6 American. But there you can see this one, as we mentioned earlier, is called Cat Yoga. It's got the gold top on it, which we always expect. And there you can see on the side is the Fermenterarna symbol. But yeah, this one, as we said, it's an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA. This one apparently is hopped with Citra and Equinaut. We've not had Equinaut in a wee while, but the Citra is T90 pellets and also cryo, and the Equinaut is the cryo type as well. But yeah, I think that covers everything that we actually need to say about the beer before we open it up and take a look. But yeah, let's do that and see what we have. Cat Yoga from Fermenterarna in Gothenburg. Really need to get up there and see if I can do a Meet the Brewery with these guys. I need to get back into doing the Meet the Brewery videos again, so we'll see how that goes. I'll tell you straight away, this does look very nice. So I always look forward to Fermenterarna time every month. So there we go, there we are. So as you can see with this one, it's poured pretty much as you would expect from a New England Hazy IPA. So before the head disappears, I think we can say that it's poured with just under a finger of a frothy, kind of cream coloured head. There are a few small bubbles kind of sticking toward the side of the glass just underneath it, and one or two bigger ones further down. But yeah, the head on this one is actually, it's not the foamiest of heads we've seen, but it still does look pretty nice. Kind of smaller bubbles toward the bottom and larger bubbles toward the top, but I think it is definitely fair to describe the head on this one as being more kind of cream coloured than perfect white. But colour wise, this beer does look pretty nice. It looks like a kind of mixed tropical fruit juice to me. As you guys watching the videos for any length of time will know, I love comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices. It's just what the appearance reminds me of. But yeah, this one has a really nice, it does have a really nice sort of mixed tropical fruit juice colour to it. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But normally in IPAs of any description, you don't often have to care about those two variables. But yeah, it certainly looks very, very nice, this one. In terms of the level of haze that this beer has, it's pretty impressive, this one. It's not unexpected for an 8%er, but yeah, remember the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you're using, and it can vary from brewery to brewery and beer to beer, but this is certainly one of the soupier and gloopier ones I've seen in recent times. So yeah, pretty damn nice looking. Other than that, I don't know if there's anything that we really need to say about the appearance of this beer, so we can probably just have a wee look at the aroma and see what it's going to have in store for us. But yeah, certainly looks the part of a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, let's take a wee look at the aroma and see what we have from this one then. Yeah, that's pretty nice, I have to say. So, as I've said to you before, for me, there are 6 things to think about when it comes to New England IPAs. You can have the sort of farmhousey yeasty character, you can have the kind of rye leaning grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in American brewed New England IPAs in my experience. But then you've got the barley malt bread, the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, and also the sweetness. And usually these beers will show you a little bit of kind of everything, to be honest. But this beer, this is kind of interesting, this one. This has got a little, you get quite a bit of the barley malt bread. There's also a good little bit of the yeastiness in there, and you can smell a bit of bitiness from the wheat, I have to say. But the hoppy side of this one This one actually comes across as being like really quite creamy. But the oats have got a little bit of dryness to them as well, so I'm wondering how old exactly this beer is. To me, it does smell as if it's a little bit older, but we'll need to see. It could just be a little bit oat heavy, and it could have a little bit of oat cream or something in it. I don't know what it says on the side. Now, it just says barley malt, wheat, and oats in this one, but it does actually smell. It smells like a number of the oat cream IPAs that I've had in the past. But I do wonder, the dryness of the oats makes me think this one's a little bit older. Oats are always a good indicator of how old your beer is. The kind of creamier they smell, the fresher the beer is, the drier they smell, the older it is when it comes to New England IPAs. So you need to bear this in mind. But the green component of this one isn't too pungent. It leans more toward the floral side of things, but at the same time it's kind of wet. So that's a basic kind of first impression of the beer. This one quite, quite oaty and creamy in some ways, but a little bit dry. Kind of wet green component, and then you've got some nice juicy fruits to it. But yeah, let's take the aroma in a little bit more deeply and kind of break it down a wee bit more. So yeah, backbone of the beer. You've kind of got everything you would expect from the style. So yeah, backbone with this beer, you can smell that sort of fresh, white bready bread crust in there. That it almost smells as if it still has a little bit of flour on it when it's come straight out of the bakery. So definitely some of that going on in this. Yeah, aroma wise, yeah, as I say, fresh, white bready bread crust. On top of that, there's a little touch of Jacob's cream cracker, but not overly much. Yeah, a little bit of fresh Jacob's cream cracker, big, thick, fluffy white bread. Yeah, big, thick, fluffy white bread to it. And it's actually got a bit of sweetness within the bread, which is quite interesting. At the back of the nose, there's certainly a little bit of a wheaty bitiness. So yeah, a little bit of wheaty bitiness in there. But also the wheat is acting as a kind of smoothing agent. But then you also have these nice big kind of oaty, creamy elements coming out of the beer too. So yeah, as I said earlier, the oaty side of the beer, the more that you smell of this, the more oats you get out of it. The oats do come across as being very, very creamy, I have to say. But there is a little touch of dryness in there. You've almost got a wee bit of that kind of porridgey element coming out of it too, which I find quite interesting. So a little bit of that going on. Yeah. Yeah, definitely a little bit of that kind of porridgey element to this one. So yeah, porridgey oaty cream. You've also got a little bit of yeah, porridgey oaty cream. You've also got that little bit of dryness, but there is a little tiny touch of like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy note to this beer, but not overly much. This beer doesn't have such a big sweet element compared to some of the other ones that we've had from Fermenterarna in the past. At the back of the nose, there's also a little bit of a kind of farmhousey, yeasty, bready sort of note coming out of it, which I do like. So definitely getting bits and bobs of that going on in this beer as well. But yeah, the malty side of this one's quite interesting. Let's focus on the green component of the beer. Yeah, you know, um, the green component for me, the more that I smell of it, the more kind of floral and pungent it gets. But you can definitely tell with this one. I found this as well because we know that there's, as I said, there's Equinaut and Citra in here, both American hops. Citra about 14% alpha acid, Equinaut about 12 if I remember rightly. But yeah, Citra's going to give you the big juicy mango-y notes and a kind of lemon limey character. Equinaut is all about the lime. But both of these hops in the cryo form, I've always found that when you use cryo, it gives you this kind of wetter impression of the green component. But with this beer, there is a teeny little bit of there's a teeny little bit of earthiness to it, but for me mainly it's a wet floral character and a very wet grassiness that you get out of this beer. So that's really interesting in itself, I think. But aroma wise, yeah, this beer is pretty damn nice, I have to say. I like how this I do like how this goes together, actually, and the green component. When it comes to the fruity side of the beer, it is kind of pretty much as you would expect if you know these hops. I get a bit of a stronger passion fruit, but there's a big juicy mango in there. You've got a few other things like little touches of apricot, little bit of little touch of pineapple and stuff like that. But yeah, for me, the citra elements, it's a big juicy mango, a little bit of stronger passion fruit, and a few wee apricot-y pineapple notes. I think that sums it up. But on top of that, you've got a nice oily, yeah, you've got a nice little bit of an oily limey character in there. So yeah, nice big oily equinocty lime, which as I say goes together very well in my opinion. But you've also got, yeah, you do also have a little bit of, there's a wee bit of the kind of lemony zest as well, which I'm guessing will be coming from the Citra. But yeah, for me, Equinox was always a big limey thing. So yeah, this beer is quite interesting. I'm curious to see what this is going to be like, because the colour of this one, when I think about it, it's a little bit darker than what we've had from Fermenterarna in recent times. Most of the IPAs we've had from them have actually been quite bright and yellow, if that makes sense. This one's a more kind of deep yellow. But yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to just ponder over the aroma of the beers before you get stuck into them. But I think it's about time that we have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, let's do this. So this one is the Cat Yoga, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Fermenterarna in Gothenburg here in Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. That's nice. I'm going to say straight away with this, it's got this really grassy, yeah, it's got this really big kind of grassy vibe to it, when, which I wasn't expecting. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. A really big kind of grassy aftertaste with this one, but it is quite oaty and creamy. This one, I don't think this beer is absolutely. I don't think it's that fresh, to be honest with you. It's still in nice enough condition, but there's just something about this. It's either a bit different or it's not madly fresh, and I got the impression from the aroma it wasn't madly fresh. So it says, yeah, it's based before the 20th of the 10th, 2023. So yeah, we're drinking this one. I'm guessing this one must be about 2 months old in the can at this time, and I think usually we drink these beers when they're about 3 or 4 weeks old. So that'll be the difference. This kind of goes to show you can pick it up. If you're seeing these, if you're around these beers kind of every day, you can actually pick up when it's not madly fresh. But it's still in good condition, and it's still really nice to drink actually. But this, definitely one of the wetter and sort of grassier New England doubles that I can remember having had from Fermenterarna. So yeah, that's interesting. So, where do we start with this beer then? It's nice, this, it really does lean more toward the oaty side of things. It's got a bit of wheatiness and, as I say, a big grassy green component and some nice juicy fruits. It's just, it is, as I say, quite different to what we've had from Fermenterarna, but this is what these guys are quite good at. They show you all the different nuances that you can put in to New England IPAs, so that's why I keep going back, and plus they're always good. So, middle third of your palate with this beer then, you can feel there's a nice little bit of a kind of fresh, white bready bread crust. So yeah, you've got that going on there, and as I said earlier, it's like the, you know, it tastes like the bread crust that you get, you know, you get the bread fresh out of the, you get the bread fresh out of the bakery, so definitely some of that going on with this one. On top of that though, definitely a little touch of Jacob's cream cracker. So your fresh bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker, and then, yeah, and then you start to get, there's a little touch of like a wholemeal brown bready character in there, but it's quite a thin layer. Then on top of that, you've got the fluffy white bread as well, which I certainly do like. Yeah, so that's kind of nice. You can feel on top of that the more dense wheaty layer as well, and the wheat actually does have a little bit of bitiness to it in this beer, which is kind of nice. So you can feel that bitey wheat in the middle third of your palate. Then above all of that, you've got the oats, and the oats are very, very creamy in this one. So this kind of goes against what I was saying earlier, because the oats have remained very, very creamy. But I would say the further you go into the aftertaste for this beer, it does get a little bit more of that sort of wheaty bitiness and wheaty spice, which is interesting. So there's a few interesting little quirks going on in this beer, I think we could say. But yeah, pardon me, down the middle line, yeah, down the middle line of your palette there, there's this, yeah, you get this big creamy oaty character, and as you go out toward the edges of the palette, it gets a little bit drier for sure. So yeah, there's a little bit of this kind of drier oaty note out of it. So yeah, oaty creamy notes in there, a little bit of a drier oaty note as well. And then, yeah, I think, I'm trying to figure out, I don't think there's a sweet component to this beer. There's definitely a little bit of, you get a little bit of that kind of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. Like in the dead centre of your palate, there's a little circle that gives you a wee bit of that. But the sweet component of this beer isn't overly prominent, and the further you go into the aftertaste, as I say, this beer gets more and more wheaty and bitey. Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, definitely, I think we've covered what we need to say about the middle third of the palate, but you can feel that the sort of oats, you can feel the wheat coming up the side of the oats in the middle of your palate with this one, so the wheat really pushes its way up, which is definitely quite interesting. Yeah. So, I think that covers everything about the middle third of the palate. Let's look at the back. Yeah, let's look at the back third of the palate with this beer then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, sorry, you can feel a little bit of that bready build up in there, which I do really quite like. But the base of the back third of your palate in this one is very yeah, it's really, you can feel that the bread crust is definitely more grainy. You've also got more of that kind of crackery sort of note to it, so that's definitely in there. So grainy breadiness, a little bit of crackery note. Above all of that, you get more of a wholemeal brown bread on the back third of your palate as well. You can feel that that layer's there, and it's definitely taller and more airy. Then you've got a taller white bready airy layer as well. And above all of that, you've got a kind of wheaty bitiness, which again I do quite like. So yeah, the wheaty bitiness lingers there, and as I say, it becomes more and more prominent the further into the aftertaste you go. And this beer, you do get more of a graininess out of it the further into the aftertaste too, but above all of that, on that back third of the palate, you get a bit more of a kind of farmhousey, bready note, so you can feel the back third of your palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of the palate, it just condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, that's definitely quite interesting in this one for me. Yeah, I like that. So yeah, that's the middle. That is the middle and back thirds of your palate with this beer. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So back corners of the palate, you can absolutely feel a little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, there's a teeny bit of herbal character, but really not a lot. So a little bit of earthiness, but as you move further and further forward, you get a nice deep floral aromaticity to this one. But it has got a little touch of spiciness as you reach the front corners of the palate. But you've got a big wet green component to this beer, which I think is the result of the use of the cryo hops. That always gives you that big wetness with this one. But that's giving you the depth, and it's also giving you the wetness for sure. But round the front curve of the palate, there's more of a kind of lighter grassy side of the beer, and it's also just wetter too. So yeah, fruity. The green component in this beer is really nice. So yeah, green component of this beer, I have to say I do really like. It really is very wet in this one, but the further into the aftertaste, you get more of the wheaty bitiness, and you also get the bigger floral notes coming out of the beer, which is quite a nice combination actually. And yeah, as I say, this beer's changing over the length of time that we're drinking it, because I thought it was more grassy in the beginning, but it certainly gets more and more floral the more that I drink of it too. So yeah, that's interesting. The border region then between the front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there. And I'd say it's white bread, but the base of that front third of your palate is more, yeah, you've got a little bit more of that kind of, yeah, there's definitely a wee bit more of a kind of grainy, bread crusty character in there, and you've also got a little bit of cracker on top, but then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's kind of keep an eye on that. So yeah, the fruity notes, if you know these hops, they are pretty much as you would expect. Yeah, the fruity notes in this beer for me are at the back of that front third of your palate. You do get a nice little bit of stronger passion fruit and maybe even grapefruit actually, and that's going to be the citra that gives you that. But as you move further forward, it mellows out and gives you a slightly juicier. It certainly gives you a little bit more of a kind of juicy passion fruit. And then as you move toward the middle of that front third of your palate, it's more along the lines of a mango flavour. And then underneath that, there's a little bit of apricot-y dryness, of course, and a wee bit of brighter pineapple. But yeah, mainly bright, juicy mango, a little bit of a bright passion fruit as well. Then as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate with this beer, it's all about the kind of limey notes from the equinot. Yeah, no, for me, it's very limey toward the front of that front third of your palate. You know, Citra and Equinot, we know both of these hops quite well. The fruity side of this beer really is not a surprise, to be honest with you, when we consider the two hops that are in here. But they do go together very, very well. It gives you a good balance between a tropical fruit and a more citrusy, zesty fruit. So I do like how this beer goes together. And as I say, it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like this one, I really do. So I think that's everything that we actually need to say about the flavour of this beer, so we can round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So, yeah, I mean, mouthfeel wise, this beer for me, it's interesting. It's kind of toward the top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It does have a little bit of a wet and clean mouthfeel to it, but you've also got elements of kind of creaminess and things in there as well. So yeah, it's interesting. In terms of the IBU count with this beer, this one actually feels a little bit more bitter. I wouldn't be surprised if this is 40 or 50 IBUs. The cryo hops in this beer, I think, really are giving you that little bit more kind of floral and slightly spicy bitterness, which I do like. The malt base, as we've talked about already, is actually quite layered. You've got a bit of grainy dryness in there. You've got a bit of nice fluffy breadiness. You've also got some sort of creamy oaty notes and a little bit of sweetness. So yeah, the way it goes together for me is really nice in its malt base. It doesn't have too big a sweet component in this beer either, which is an interesting thing. But Fermenterarna, when I would think about them, they always have been a little bit more yeasty and kind of wheaty or oaty. They've not really been that sweet. We have had one or two sweeter ones from them, and we have had one or two more bitter ones actually. So yeah, this is quite an interesting combination, I have to say that. So yeah, on the fruity side of things then, for me, this beer, it's quite, I say, well, we haven't mentioned the IBU count. Like I say, I think this one is 40 or 50 IBUs. The fruity side of this beer, it leans a bit more toward the more pungent tropical side of things, but that's actually quite well balanced by the kind of citrusy zest that it has. I do think it gets a little bit of a lemony character as well the further into the aftertaste you go. But like I've said earlier, more wheaty bitiness later on, more floral aromaticity, but you also get that little bit of citrusy zest. So it's a bit more of a punchy New England IPA, this one, in comparison to what I've had from Fermenterarna in the past. And like I said earlier, I'm not 100% sure this one is as fresh as the other ones that we've reviewed previously, but it's still in good condition and it's still a nice, enjoyable beer. So you can't ask for much more than that, to be honest with you. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that one. This was the Cat Yoga, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Fermenterarna in Gothenburg. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Fermenterarna as well. and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point again in the very near future. But until then, Slange, Skål, cheers, check out Fermenterarna, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Skål!